Thursday afternoon to you. It's 4 o'clock in time for Sports4CLE. Thanks for joining us. Hope you're having a good afternoon. Mike Florio from Pro Football Talk on what he thinks the Browns will do with Deshaun Watson this season.
Well, you got to keep him. The way they've structured the deal, the way they've engineered the cap hit, they can't cut him. And we already know they owe him every penny of the 5-year, $230 million. So you got a new head coach, and he's on the team. He's available. Let's see what he can do. There's been no indication that he's disruptive. If anything, the reviews have been positive on how he helps the other quarterbacks. You let him compete, and you see if he can turn the clock back to 2020. He was an MVP candidate. He would have been an MVP finalist if the Texans hadn't been 4-12. That was the year that Bill O'Brien was fired 4 games in, and the team wasn't good. But Deshaun Watson had a really good, strong season. His career went sideways after that. He wanted out of Houston, then came the lawsuits. So I would give him a fair chance to compete. Here's the thing, though, and I know he was injured most of last year, but he was back practicing. I didn't hear anything to suggest that guys are like, wow, wait till next year when this guy's ready to go. Like, there was no – like, you're going to get buzz on the practice field if somebody comes out and they're just lighting it up. And there was nothing like that. If it was happening, guys kept it to themselves. So that's an interesting wrinkle from my perspective.
That's fair. There were people that thought he was the best-looking quarterback that the Browns had, but that isn't saying a whole lot now, is it? Robert Mays of the Athletics Football Show, what to expect from Shedeur Sanders in the quarterback room next year?
I think the hope should be that he's a little bit better than he was last year. You know, you saw some flashes, but overall the quality of quarterback play was pretty poor for most of the season. And some of that is the state of the offensive line. Some of that is the state of the offense overall. But again, I think if I were a Browns fan heading into this season, I would not hold out any sort of hope that either of the guys that are going to make up the quarterback room this year are going to be answers for you moving into 2027. Like, it hurts to hear that heading into a year where there's really nothing to attach yourself to other than just like plugging your nose and making it to the end. But it kind of feels like that's where we are. It was always going to be a messy end when the Deshaun Watson thing didn't work out, and we're working through that messy end right now. And so I don't think any sort of like realistic or hopeful expectations for the quarterback room are in your best interest if you want to be like a satisfied Browns fan by the end of this season. I think you got to keep your eye on the prize, and that is the 2027 offseason and everything that may come after that.
We'll have plenty of Browns talk ahead with Mary Kay Cabot of the Plain Dealer, cleveland.com, and Pete Smith from the Orange and Brown Report. Let's turn our attention to the Guardians. Getting ready to open the regular season in a couple of days. Guardians president of baseball operations, Chris Antonetti, talked about the decision that led to Parker Messick winning the 5th spot in the starting rotation.
And Mason, that was one of the most difficult decisions we had in camp. Logan was such a big part of our team last year and made some great contributions. But, you know, we were pretty upfront coming into camp that we had 6 starters for what we anticipated would be 5 spots. And every one of those guys was healthy. And, you know, Parker came in and along with Joey and Slade and pitched really well and continued their progression. Logan was just a little bit less consistent, and whether or not that was affected by him leaving camp for the WBC, really hard to say, but he just wasn't quite at his best, breaking camp. So we know, as we told him, he's going to be a big part of our team this year. You know, for us to get to where we want to go and play in October, he's going to have to make a meaningful contribution. And, you know, our goal with him at this point is to continue to partner with him to help him progress, get back to the level of the pitcher that we've seen him be at the major league level, and when the need's there, be ready for it.
So Logan Allen will start the season in Columbus, is the Clippers' top of the rotation guy in AAA. Chase DeLauder hit 2 more home runs last night against the Diamondbacks. Chris Antonetti, with what they've seen from DeLauder this spring.
Chase has had a really good camp so far, but I think it's just a continued progression of the things that he's shown in the time in the organization, that he's a dynamic player that, you know, really does a good job offensively, controls the strike zone well, makes good to swing decisions. And when he swings, he's got a chance to really impact the ball, as we saw last night. So we're excited to have him as part of our roster as we break camp, and are hopeful that he can be a meaningful part of our lineup for the balance of the season.
And DeLauder is going to be a key to this offense. You've got Quan leading off, they're batting DeLauder second in front of Jose Ramirez. If DeLauder can hit even a little bit like he has in the spring, Jose Ramirez is going to have a huge year because he's going to see a lot more pitches that he can do something with. Time for us to take a quick time out. Mary Kay Cabot is up first. We're talking Browns when Sports4CLE returns. Stay with us.
You got so much to do. It's got you feeling blue. Put a little play in your day. 'Cause it's fun all over the state. So come on. Great games wait for you and me. The Ohio Lottery. Put a little play in your day. Put a little play in your day.
Browns are up first on Sports4CLE. A list of some of the top 30 visits that we know of. Guys that have come to Berea to visit with the Browns. 7 wide receivers. So Jordan Tyson, Carnell Tate, Omar Cooper, Chris Bell, Denzel Boston, Mekhi Lemon, Jermaine Bernard. Also a quarterback, Ty Simpson, offensive tackle, a safety, and an edge rusher. Let's welcome in Mary Kay Cabot, Browns beat reporter from the Plain Dealer, cleveland.com. Mary Kay, you look at that. Does that tell you anything about what Andrew Berry is thinking relative to the upcoming draft?
Well, I do think that it informs his plans somewhat, not entirely, but I think it's pretty obvious that they have to add a wide receiver at some point in this draft and probably early on. So they're having some of the top ones in, and I think you can look for the Browns to probably seriously consider drafting one in the first round or the second round.
All right, so the other thing that we know is that they brought Ty Simpson, Alabama quarterback, has ties to Todd Monken, to Berea, to talk about him. I know you wrote an article about it, and there's at least one, probably a couple that I have heard, who actually have him as QB1, not QB2 as most do. Take us through that article, kind of your thoughts of Ty Simpson and what the Browns are looking into with him.
Well, they're definitely doing their diligence on Ty Simpson. There's no question about that. They have had him in for the top 30 visit. They met with him formally at the NFL Combine, and they're continuing to do their work on him. Now, will they go and draft him in the first round? That's really hard to say. There's something that tells me that that's probably not going to happen, but I can't really say that definitively right now because I really don't know what they're thinking. And I also do think that they have more work to do on Ty Simpson. Now, when we go out to the owners' meetings, I leave on Saturday, and then we have interviews with the Haslams, with Andrew Berry, with Todd Monken out there from Sunday through Monday, or Tuesday actually. When we go out there, I think we'll find out a little bit more about what their thinking is, but even then, you can't really count 100% on what you're hearing because they have to put things out there to maybe throw some other teams off, to drum up interest in their pick, and those kinds of things. So I don't know if we'll get any kind of true insight into whether or not they would draft Ty Simpson early on in the draft, perhaps with one of those first 3 picks, but we might get a better idea. There are a lot of things to like about Ty Simpson, and as you mentioned, some people think that he's better than Fernando Mendoza. We're just starting to hear that now. Dan Orlovsky was one of the guys, the ESPN analyst, that mentioned that. And then Mike Tannenbaum from ESPN, a former NFL GM, he kind of chimed in and said that he's talked to teams that feel the same way. So it's going to get a little interesting here as we move towards the draft.
Yeah, and the big knock against Ty Simpson has been lack of starts at the collegiate level, which is always something that NFL teams factor in. Has he played a bunch of games to see different things and experience different things that he's going to experience in the NFL?
Right. That is a key knock against him, is that he has only started 15 games. All of those came last year at Alabama. In the first 8 games, however, against very high-level competition, he threw 20 touchdowns against only 1 interception. He makes some really, really nice plays. He's got perfectly functional arm strength. He doesn't have the strongest arm in the world, but he can make all the throws. He makes really good decisions. He's got good footwork, good mobility. He can fit it into tight windows. And I just think there's a lot to like about him. So we'll have to see. I think the key here is, do they think that he would have more upside for them than Shedeur Sanders right now?
And the other thing to keep in mind, Todd Monken, again, will be able to get some of the information about him that a lot of other coaches won't. He has a relationship with his dad, who's a coach. He has a good enough relationship that he can call Alabama and find out from his time coaching at Georgia.
Oh yeah, absolutely. They have ways of finding out whatever they need to find out, and we know that Nick Saban, who has a good relationship with the Browns, I'm sure that he'll have some intel on Ty Simpson. But who better than his own dad? Even though I'm sure he's a little bit biased, but he's a football coach too. He coaches UT Martin as their head coach, and he knows Todd Monken from their Southern Miss connection. Now they weren't there together. But Jason Simpson played baseball there. Todd Monken was the head football coach there. And so they know each other from that connection. And Todd can get all the intel that he needs on Ty Simpson from Jason. And that's very beneficial. That's very, very helpful. So as a person, as a human being, I'm sure that there's a lot to like about Ty Simpson. I talked to him myself at the Combine. I really, really liked him a lot. But they have to obviously have a comfort level with what he brings to the table on the football field.
All right, so this is from one of your Hey Mary case. Do you think the Browns, they load up on the offensive line in free agency? Does that kind of lock them into a wide receiver early in the draft?
I don't think they're really locked into anything early in the draft, because we have to know by now that Andrew Berry will do whatever it takes to find the best available player for this football team in the draft, no matter where he's picking. So he goes into it acting as though it's an expansion team and they need everything. So I don't think that he's going to draft for need. He never ever does that. And so, I just think that wide receiver is on the table, offensive tackle is on the table, even defensive guys are on the table and in play at number 6 overall. As far as the receivers and offensive tackles are concerned, this draft just so happens to be very strong in those positions, which aligns with some of the Browns' needs.
So when you look at the top of the draft, most feel that it skews towards the defensive side of the football, because there's some edge rushers, linebackers, Caleb Downs, a safety. Do you think if one of those guys is sitting there, Andrew Berry will pull the trigger and go that way, because that's kind of the highest guy that he thinks has the highest upside?
Well, I do think that they probably will lean more towards offense, but if the best available player at number 6 is a defensive player, then he'll go defense there. And I also think they'll try to trade down from number 6 unless they decide that they have to have Ty Simpson and they can only get him at number 6. Barring that, I think they will look to trade down from number 6 overall. So they're open for business there, and anything can happen. They can go defense, they can go offense, they can basically do anything. They can go quarterback. So it really just is kind of all up in the air right now, and they still have plenty of work to do. But when the owners' meetings are underway next week, they will be talking to teams about trades.
You look at 6. What are some of the things that Andrew Berry has to consider? Is he looking for a guy that he looks at and goes, this guy can be a foundational piece? Or is he looking for a guy that he looks and goes, well, if this guy develops this, and this, then we have something? Is there more projection, or do you look for more of a guy that is a quote-unquote can't miss, even though there aren't any such things in any draft?
Well, it sort of depends upon the position, right? If you decide, and I have no idea if they would do this right now, it almost seems to me like they are really ready to march forward with Deshaun Watson versus Shedeur Sanders. But if they do decide that Ty Simpson is who they pick at number 6, or at number 8 or number 12 if they trade down, or whatever the case may be, if they go that route, there is a world in which he might not make an impact right away. Now, maybe he plays at some time or starts at some point during the season, but there's probably also a world in which you don't want to throw a guy in who's only started 15 college games right into the starting lineup. So that could be a situation where, even though he hopefully, if you draft him there, will bring you that kind of impact in the future, in the near future. He might have to sit for a little bit this year behind a Deshaun Watson or someone else. So, we'll have to see how that goes. Again, at this moment in time, I'm not expecting that to happen. I feel like they'll probably go offensive tackle or wide receiver with their first round pick or their first pick in the first round. But again, everything is up for grabs right now.
So again, this is from one of your Hey Mary case. Do you think there's a chance that the Browns go into training camp without any major upgrades at wide receiver or at the quarterback position?
No, I don't think there's a chance that that's going to happen. It could happen at quarterback, of course. It could happen at quarterback. They could decide that they have what they need in the room with Deshaun Watson and Shador Sanders, and then also Dylan Gabriel is still in there. And I've been saying that I think they would be open to trading him, but it's not like they're clamoring to trade him. They're willing to develop him too and see what he can do and how far he can come in this offense and with the better supporting cast. But as far as the receiving core, yes, I think they're going to upgrade the receiving core. I think they recognize that they need at least one or two other premier pass catchers on this football team, and I expect them to find those guys in this draft.
If they get a wide receiver at either at 6 or 24, what does that do for Jerry Jeudy, for Harold Fannin? So a guy on the outside or a guy that can open up the field. Does that just make even Quinshon Judkins? Does that make your three pieces that are already there even that much better?
It really does. I mean, you have to have weapons. You have to have guys like that. The best football teams, when you look around, they have multiple really good pass catchers and multiple weapons. And that's what they need on this football team. And they have a few pieces in that regard already. They hope to revive the career of Jerry Jeudy. They really like Isaiah Bond, of course. And they hope that he takes that next step up. And they have a couple of other young guys. But the room is there for them to add a couple of premier pass catchers to this football team. Maybe it's a wide receiver and a tight end. Maybe it's two wide receivers. But they need those weapons, and that will make either Deshaun or Shador or whoever their quarterback is that much better too.
Mary Kay Cabot, Browns beat reporter for Plain Dealer, cleveland.com, and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out. Other side of the break, we'll head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. We'll also talk a little bit about that Browns quarterback position. Sports for CLE. I'll be right back. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
We continue talking Browns with Mary Kay Cabot, Browns beat reporter for the Plain Dealer and cleveland.com. Let's head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Hey, Dave. Pete in Columbus got a simple question for you all. The Browns have the 6th overall pick based on the record from last year. So why do they not have the 6th pick in the second round? That would be number 38. They don't pick until number 39. Somehow Houston has a pick that was apparently originally from the Commanders. Just curious as to why the Browns don't have the 6th pick in the second round. All right. Thanks. Go Browns.
As always, appreciate all of the voicemails. So Mary Kay, they were tied at five wins, 12 losses with the Commanders. So they had the tiebreaker. So they get the pick in the first round, and then it alternates. Commanders get that pick in this. It goes back and forth throughout the rounds because they ended up with a like record.
Right. Absolutely. That's how that works. And the good thing for the Browns is that they have these three very, very high picks in the first two rounds, 6, 24, 39. And they should be able to come away with three pretty good impact players from those first three picks if they draft the way that they did last year.
So, again, from your Browns insider, poised for a Deshaun Watson, Shador Sanders battle. Take us through that and kind of your thoughts on how they'll lay that out, being Todd Monken and the Browns. What are they looking at with that?
Well, first of all, it's pretty obvious by now that they are not pursuing a veteran quarterback. And they really didn't pursue a veteran quarterback in free agency or the trade market to this point. Now, sometimes opportunities present themselves later, things that you didn't foresee. But at this point, it really seems like it's going to be Deshaun versus Shador unless they decide to draft a quarterback. And if they do that, then I think it probably informs what happens with Shador. It probably means that they think the rookie potentially might be able to have more upside potential than Shador. But it doesn't also necessarily mean that either. It just might mean that they draft one in a later round and he comes in and maybe sort of takes the place of Dylan Gabriel, and it is still then Deshaun Watson versus Shador Sanders for that starting job. So that's how it is right now. The offseason program begins very, very soon. April 6th, the day after Easter, they will be back in that building for the offseason workout program. And it all begins then. And they will have an open competition, again, right as of right now, between those two guys for the most part. And they'll see how it goes. And once they start to put it out on the grass in OTAs, then I think Todd Monken will start to have a pretty good feel for who's picking up the scheme and who's going to ultimately give them a better chance to win. If it works out the way that he hopes it does, one of those two guys will be the starter heading into training camp. You don't really want to give up those precious reps in the early part of training camp to two different guys. You want to get your number one, your QB1 going, and you want to give him as many opportunities as he can to get his timing down with his receivers and pass catchers and his supporting cast in a very, very new offense. So, that's how it's going to get started. And again, we'll just see on draft weekend if anything changes.
So what about Dylan Gabriel? Where does that leave him? I mean, Todd Monken's the guy that's going to look at every quarterback because he's an offensive guy.
Well, they'll give him an opportunity to go out there and compete and show what he can do with an upgraded supporting cast and with a brand new offensive line and a new scheme and a new system. And he'll have a chance to show what he can do, but I don't get the sense right now that he is in the top two in terms of competing for that starting job. I think it's the other two guys, and then Dylan will probably mostly compete for sort of the backup spot or a backup spot unless they decide to move him.
All right, so Brown's still looking for a left tackle, and they are listed as a possible landing spot for Taylor Decker. Decker requested that the Lions cut him after they asked him to take a pay cut, and he said no. There are some publications, websites that list the Browns as a potential landing spot for Decker. It's a guy that's over 30, has been good, probably wants a decent chunk of money. What are your thoughts about Decker to the Browns?
I think at this point, because they have spent so much money and so many resources on the rest of the line, I think they are content to either go with DeJuan Jones at left tackle or draft their left tackle coming up in April. At this point, I really don't see them spending that kind of money on their new left tackle. Can never say never, but right at this moment, I just don't see that happening.
So they signed a lot of interior linemen as well. Johnson, Jenkins, Tevin Jenkins, they re-signed. What does that mean for Zach Zinter? Again, this is from one of your Hey Mary Kays. One of the guys they drafted out of Michigan, third round, wasn't healthy, coming off a broken leg, and then just couldn't stay healthy when he got on the field.
Well, he has an opportunity to prove himself in this offseason and preseason. It's his chance to step up. Andrew Berry has said he wants some of these younger guys, some of these younger draft picks, to have an opportunity to show what they can do, and Zach Zinter falls into that category. So he's going to have to go out there and show that he deserves that job more than Tevin Jenkins deserves a starting job, or maybe even Elton Jenkins if he ends up at one of the guard spots. So that's what Zach is going to have to do. And once again, it will start on April 6th or April 7th or whenever they open their offseason program. And he's got a lot to prove. This is his third year, and it's time for him to really get out there and show what he can do.
Do you think there's we've talked about wide receivers. Do you think there's a free agent wide receiver out there that makes sense? I mean, some of the names, Tyreek Hill, Stephon Diggs, Keenan Allen,
No, I don't really think so. Once again, I think that's a situation where they feel good about some of the pieces that they have, and I know they like a number of the wide receivers in this draft. There are a lot of really good ones. They're having so many of them in for the top 30 visits. And I think that they would be really smart to go out and draft one either in the first round, the second round, something like that. I think they probably should draft 2 pass catchers, again, either 2 receivers or receiver tight end. And I just don't see them going out and spending a bunch of money on a veteran wide receiver right now.
Could you see him trading? The concern that I have with the trade is Jalen Waddle cost a first-round pick, so that kind of has an inflated value now for trading for wide receivers.
Yeah, I don't see that happening, in part because I think they need to be poised to be able to draft a quarterback next year in the event that they need one. Next year is shaping up to be a pretty decent quarterback class, at least that's the way that it looks right now. And you want to be able to participate in that if you possibly can. So you don't want to be giving up first-round picks right now. In fact, you would rather be acquiring first-round picks right now. Now, I don't know if they could get a first-round pick for their number 6 overall pick, but you might be able to. You never know. And, I think they would be more inclined to do something like that. So I don't see that happening.
Mary Kay Cabot, Browns beat reporter for Plain Dealer, and cleveland.com and I are going to step aside, take one more time out. We'll talk a little bit about the potential of an 18-game regular season in the NFL, as well as some more draft talk about the Browns. Sports4CLE, be right back. Stay with us.
You got so much to do, it's got you feeling blue. Put a little play in your day, 'cause it's fun all over the state. So come on, great games wait for you and me. The Ohio Lottery. Put a little play in your day. Put a little play in your day.
We continue talking Browns with Mary Kay Cabot, Browns beat reporter for Plain Dealer, cleveland.com. Mike Florio, Pro Football Talk, with his thoughts on the NFL expanding to 18 regular season games.
There will be 18 games.
Okay.
The question is when. And here's the latest it'll happen. It'll happen in 2031 because when the current CBA expires, the NFL will lock the players out until the players cry uncle. And as we learned in 2011, the NFL, the league, the owners, they'll shut the game down for a full season if they have to get what they want. The players won't. That was learned in 1987 when the strike collapsed after 3 weeks of replacement players and guys crossed the picket lines and the players all came back. And we all learned that the players just want to play football and they want to get paid to play football. They are not in a financial position to go without 1 year of their prime NFL earning capacity. So if we're going to have it by 2031, the question becomes, how do they get a deal done before then? And one of the things I reported the day after the Super Bowl was that the Atlanta Super Bowl in February of 2028, it still doesn't have a specific date, which is unheard of at this point of the calendar. You need to have convention center for the whole week. You need to have thousands of hotel rooms reserved. They always have the date for the game at least 2 years in advance. They've specifically delayed scheduling that Super Bowl in order to allow for the possibility of an 18th game by the 2027 season. So that tells me they're going to move quickly. They're going to make what they believe is a compelling case to J.C. Tretter on a new CBA based on 18 regular season games, 16 international games per year, whatever else they're looking for.
And J.C. Tretter now the president of the Players Association again. Mary Kay, I guess that's coming, and I would think one of the other options they look at is a second bye week, so you have 20 weeks of scheduling because that's the TV that factors into TV package. And if you can add one game and have 2 more weeks of a regular season, salary cap's just going to keep going up because that's a percentage of revenue.
Absolutely. So we're going to be flying to Australia, having a 20-week regular season, 2 bye weeks, 18 games. It just keeps growing and growing and growing and changing, but that's just the nature of this business. It's so popular, and they haven't even really tapped into the international market yet, hardly at all. So that's the wave of the future. I expect all of that to happen, and it will probably happen sooner than later.
Yeah, and again, people love football. It means 2 more weeks of regular season football, and it'll extend the Super Bowl out as well. Let's go back to the draft. So Damian Parson, Locked On NFL Draft Podcast, with an ideal scenario for the Browns in the first round.
For a while, I was mocking, probably I think it was Cardinal Tate at 6 and everything. And I like Cardinal Tate. Do I think he's a top 7 player in this class? Not necessarily. Not how I have it graded. There's some other guys ahead of him. I think you make the swing at Monroe Freeling, the tackle from Georgia, 6'7", 315. He's got the pass protection prowess, the lateral movements. He's an athletic young man with great arm length and wingspan. I think 34 and some change on the arm. He's got developmental strength there, so you can talking about adding a little bit of weight, getting up to 320, maybe 322, add a little bit more functional strength to his body, to his frame and mass. But this is a guy that absolutely has the chops to play left tackle and to be that pass protector. And that's the one thing. The Browns did a lot of extensive work on the offensive line this offseason. Now getting that future left tackle, even if they bring back, they have DeJuan Jones, if you want to let him play the left tackle spot early, that's fine, right? Let them guys battle it out in camp. I think it's a lot. I'd rather go with the high upside situation of Freeling and then getting the receiver at 24 if we're going to go wide receiver, because this is a deep class, rather than trying to take a Cardinal Tate and then hoping that there's a left tackle worthy. There's not a ton of left tackles in this class, and I don't want to pigeonhole myself into taking somebody that I wouldn't want starting at the left tackle spot as a rookie.
Mary Kat, it kind of goes back to what I was asking you a little bit earlier about projection. When I hear a guy doesn't have functional lower half strength, and that's kind of what people have said a little bit about Monroe Freeling. He's only 21. He needs to get stronger on his lower half. That concerns me for my left tackle, because the question is, can he maintain all the good things he does in addition to adding functional strength?
Right. I mean, that is something that you would have to think about and be concerned about. Now, once they get here into the NFL, they're going to be training full time, and they're going to be working with the best of the best, and they have amazing facilities to work in and those kinds of things. And I'm sure he had great facilities at Georgia too. But when you do hear something like that, it has to give you pause. And so I'm not 100% certain that they feel really comfortable with Monroe Freeling, but I know he's on their radar at number 6 overall. And if you feel that way about him, then you feel pretty confident that you can solve any of those issues, including the fact that he hasn't started a ton of games in college either. So, sometimes with a prospect like that, it's not going to be perfect, but you have to go with the best option that you can find wherever you're picking.
And I'm going to come back to this again. He went to Georgia, so Todd Monken knows him pretty well, and he can get all the answers about what kind of work ethic and those kind of. He can get the answers if he can put that weight on and strength on and maintain what he has.
Absolutely. And Kirby Smart will, of course, be 100% honest with Todd and not be trying to sell the program and those kinds of things. So he can rest assured that he'll get the intel that he needs from Kirby Smart and the wait staff and other people in that building after having spent so much time there.
So what are some of the factors Andrew Berry is weighing at 6 when he's looking at, do I take a tackle? Do I take a wide receiver? Do I take defensive player who's sitting there who I think can be elite? What's the calculus that goes into making this draft pick?
Well, I think that they'll set up their board and they will come up with 6 players that they feel really, really good about at number 6 overall. And if they feel that one of them is worth that number 6 pick, and depending on how the first 5 fall, they'll stay there and take that player. But they can also trade back, and I know that they will look to do that, and they will work hard at the annual meetings coming up to talk to other teams and see what their thoughts are on possibly trading up to that number 6 overall pick. So he'll look at everything. I mean, he'll look at, once again, he's going to try to get the best available player there, but he's open to anything, including trading down.
All right, so what do you think is a dream scenario for Andrew Berry and the Browns with their first 3 picks, 6'4", and 39? If they get these things, they come away and they go, all right, we got this. We did well.
Yeah, I don't know if you can make a dream scenario right now for them based on the fact that, they still don't know how some of the board above them is going to go. And I don't know if they have Ty Simpson in mind for one of those picks. But I mean, I would think offensive tackle, wide receiver, and then maybe a quarterback with one of those picks.
Yeah, and here's an interesting thing. Do you think they try, if that quarterback is there, do they try to trade back into the back half of the first round because you have the fifth-year option? So would you trade 30? Would you trade 39 to get back into the last couple picks of the first round?
For Ty Simpson, you might do that. I don't think there's another quarterback that warrants a first-round pick right now, at least not from what I can gather. So he's somebody that you might do that for. But again, I don't know if they're in the mind frame to do that right now. I think they're looking at it like, let's get all the pieces that we need, see what we have this year, and then maybe go look at the quarterback next year. Unless, of course, they go with one of the developmental guys later. I mean, Taylon Green is somebody that you could look at in a later round as somebody to bring in as a developmental guy, and then maybe you think about trading Dylan Gabriel. So there's lots of options and different things that you can do with quarterbacks and the other positions.
Wouldn't it seem reasonable that if you upgrade the wide receiving core, you've already upgraded the line, you still have work to do on the line, better quarterback play would follow from that?
Well, it absolutely might. That might happen. I mean, Shedeur Sanders might fare so much better with a better supporting cast and with a whole offseason in the system and within a whole offseason of throwing to starters. I mean, I think that there is some thought to, hey, let's see what we have in this guy. He showed flashes of elite playmaking ability, as Todd Monken said, and why not see where that can take them? So, yes, I would think that with an upgraded supporting cast, you're probably going to get the best from Deshaun Watson and Shedeur Sanders.
Before I let you go, you wrote an article, just second wave of free agency, the Browns do some defensive depth work as well as special teams work. Take us through that and how you think they've done overall in free agency.
Well, they added some much needed rotational pieces for defensive depth in that second wave of free agency. They signed Kalia Davis at defensive tackle. It gives them the leeway to let Shelby Harris walk in the event that he ends up somewhere else. And he's a good rotational piece. He started 17 games for the 49ers last year. And then they added A.J. Epineza to their defensive end rotation. And before last season, he had 3 straight years in which he had 6.5 sacks, 6.5, and 6 sacks. So that's about what you would want from your third edge over there. And, if they could get that out of him, I think they would be in really good shape. Then they brought back a couple of cornerbacks in Trey Avery and D'Angelo Ross. So they worked really hard to, just to kind of fill some holes and some spots, and they did a nice job with that.
Mary Kay Cabot, Browns beat reporter for Plain Dealer, cleveland.com. As always, great stuff. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Mary Kay.
Sure, thanks for having me.
Mary Kay Cabot, make sure you check her out, Plain Dealer, cleveland.com. Best Browns coverage you're going to find. We're going to step aside, take a quick time out. We continue talking Browns on Sports4CLE. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
We continue talking Browns on Sports4CLE. NFL insider from Sirius XM NFL Radio, Adam Kaplan, talking about Shedeur Sanders and the Browns quarterback situation.
There was this belief in coaching circles that if you want to work with the Browns, you've got to at least believe that Shedeur Sanders will be a factor in the quarterback position. Nobody's handing him the job, to be clear. But there was this belief that, look, there's talent with this guy. There's no doubt about it. As a matter of fact, I strongly believe, had there not been concerns with his character, he would not have gotten out of the third round. He's a drop-back quarterback. He's not a runner. He could scramble. He's not a runner. There's a lot of talent with this guy. the question is he committed to being it? Is he talented? Is he committed to being and developing his talent? That was the issue coming to the draft. That's why he dropped to the 5th round, which definitely was surprising. I'll admit it. I thought he'd go earlier. But based on the teams I spoke with who interviewed him, who talked to him before the draft, I mean, you could see why he dropped. Now, that was then. This is now. He's got a wonderful chance to be their quarterback of the future. I'm very interested to see what Andrew Berry does with all this draft capital. He set them up pretty well. As I mentioned, 3 picks in the top 39. They've got a 3, they've got a 4, 2 5s, a 6, and a 7. But quarterback, guys, is not the only position. They have very little depth on this football team.
Let's welcome in Pete Smith from the Orange and Brown Report. Pete, I play that. I guess the question I want to ask is, what do you need to see? What do you think the Browns need to see from Shedeur Sanders to think he's their guy moving forward?
The first thing he's got to do is be much better with his footwork and then reading and being able to diagnose defenses. If he can do that, his talent with how he throws the ball, his accuracy, his ability to make plays will stand out. But, you know, granted, the supporting cast was what it was, but there are just too many mistakes that you just cannot make at that position. So if he grows in those areas, and then the other element is win football games, because it's going to be a similar situation as was this past year. Had the Browns not won football games at the end of the year, we're probably talking about Fernando Mendoza as the quarterback. So he's got a similar dynamic in that he has to make sure he wins enough football games to take that off the table.
The other thing is the Browns, all the Shedeur fans that don't think the Browns want him to succeed, I don't understand that. If he can show he is their quarterback moving forward, it's a 5th-round quarterback, so they don't have to pay him anything for a couple of years. That gets them out of the jail they've been in with the Deshaun Watson contract. Nobody more than Andrew Berry and Todd Monken want Shedeur Sanders to be that quarterback.
Right, and if they were to nail the draft and Shedeur Sanders is that guy, they're immediately in talks to win the division because it's wide open enough. It's not going to be easy by any stretch. But if they were to get a really good left tackle and a really good receiver and really overhaul the offense and get better offensive line plan, those things, and so all of a sudden the quarterback comes into the fold and works, they're going to win a whole lot of football games with this defense. And, you know, everybody wins in that scenario. Andrew Berry now becomes a hero. Todd Monken is going to be, you know, talked about as coach of the year. Like, it works for everyone in the equation.
All right. Here are a list of players who are free agents. PFF feels these players can be steals. Diggs, Hill, and Allen, wide receivers. Kevin Zeitler, who was with the Browns a number of years back, is a guard. Taylor Decker, offensive tackle, and Kirk Cousins, quarterback. Any of those guys intrigue you? There's a couple of publications think that Taylor Decker to the Browns is one of the most logical. Do any of those guys intrigue you even at all?
Kevin Zeitler does, and he played for this team in the aughts. It has no logic in it for him. I think he wants to go somewhere and win and compete. But like, they could use him at right guard. He's still functional and good. The other one that stands out is Kirk Cousins. And look, I think what the Browns are going to do at the very least is go to OTAs and see what Shedeur Sanders and Dylan Gabriel and I guess the other one, how they look, and see if, you know, Todd Monken comes out and goes, yeah, I think we can work with this. Or if he comes out and there goes, I need help. And all of a sudden they revisit the Kirk Cousins conversation. Kirk Cousins is in the conversation for the Pittsburgh Steelers as well. And if he doesn't land in one of those spots, he's going to be a backup somewhere. But so there's reason for him to sort of wait and see from that standpoint. The Taylor Decker conversation is uncomfortable because if you listen to him talk about what he was dealing with last year in terms of physical pain, it's not a monetary issue for him. If he's going to play, it's going to be to win something, not to I don't think he wants to die on the field for the Browns to win 8 games this year. So I think for him, if San Francisco is to somehow trade Trent Williams, which seems increasingly unlikely, I could see him slide in there. Or he's going to wait and see how these things sort of play out and then try to join a team where he can help and win. That's the only thing that makes sense for him.
All right, this also from PFF, talking about each team's most valuable trade asset. For the Browns, they have the 6th overall pick. Cardinals, they have Harrison, Bengals, T. Higgins, Marvin Mims, a lot of wide receivers on this list. In fact, they're all wide receivers. A.J. Brown, Jordan Addison, Quentin Johnson. Can you see Andrew Berry swinging a trade? Does some of those guys are intriguing, you know. What do you think? I guess I'd give 39 for Marvin Harrison or T. Higgins. What are your thoughts relative to that?
Well, I mean, I really, really hope that the number 6 pick is that valuable and then teams are really after it, first and foremost. Marvin Mims is interesting. It really depends on how the Broncos view their situation because he also returns punts. Marvin Mims is this guy who every time he's on the field and they throw him the ball, he does good things. And then for whatever reason, they take him off the field. I've never understood it. He seems really productive, and they keep adding guys. So he's one that makes sense. But I don't know that there's necessarily an impetus to make a trade right at this moment. Otherwise, I think it would already be done. I don't know what the equation that's going to change where suddenly everybody wants to make a deal. I think teams are sort of holding out to see what the draft does first because that's going to be the cheapest place to get talent. There's a world where I guess theoretically you could see the Browns, to your point, if they want to swing 39th pick, they might do it during the draft, depending on how that shakes out, depending on how the board falls. If they don't get what they want and then they want to revisit one of these things, I could see that. The Cardinals and Marvin Harrison, I don't see if the Cardinals are really that intent on dumping him, I'd be very worried because their sales pitch for whoever they're going to try to get at quarterback for the future, he's one of the guys. Like they've got a lot of weapons there, and if he can sort of figure it out and be a really good receiver, they're in really good shape. So if they're after 2 years for all the talent this kid is supposed to have to basically dump him for a second-round pick, that would be very worrying to me.
Can you see Andrew Berry swinging a trade or two before or during the draft?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think everybody thinks that they want to move down if they can help it. It just comes down to, is there a team that thinks there's something worth trading up for? And, you know, there's a lot of people looking at the Dallas Cowboys and saying, you know, people who cover the Cowboys are looking at this and going, they think the Dallas Cowboys really want to go get a pass rusher. They were, despite the fact that they got rid of their best pass rusher, Micah Parsons, for 2 first-round picks, they then made a competing bid for Max Crosby, have given up on that. So if they're in the market for one and they don't want to get sort of locked out, they might be a team that wants to trade up to secure a David Bailey or a Reuben Bain or something along those lines. And the Browns might be all too happy to drop down to 12 to do it.
Would you do that? What would it take in your mind, if you're Andrew Berry, what would it take to get the Browns to drop from 6 to 12? What would you want in addition to 12?
So the common framework that's sort of being thrown around is 6 and 39 for 12 and 20, which, you know, maybe there's a couple sweeteners on each side that they add, but that's a pretty sweet setup for the Browns because they not only move back and get into the teens, and if they're sitting there going, we don't really love the idea of using a top 10 pick on Monroe Freeling or Spencer Fano, and they're sitting there at 12, it's a little bit more palatable to take them at 12, where the contract is cheaper and everything else. Not only that, but your next pick isn't as far back, and you have 3 first-round picks at that point. So at that point, if you're looking at this thing and going, we really want to revamp the offense, or Mike Rutenberg is sitting there, please, I want a defensive toy. You can get 2 offensive players and defensive impact pair with a player between 12, 20, and 24, or, what a lot of people would hope to do is use one of those picks and trade out somehow that somebody is looking to do something insane, like, I don't know, trade for a wildly speedy pass rusher with overwhelming character concerns and giving up a first-round pick the next year, who then promptly gets arrested for doing God only knows, who's now probably ruined his career. So I don't know if that situation is out there for them, but I think that's the dream scenario. Get 2 picks, maybe trade one out, or get 3 picks, and they sort of recreate that 2017 draft.
The other thing that keep in mind, the advantage of having the first-round pick, you get the 5th-year option if your guy hits. There's an extra year where you can control or at least buy some time to keep the salary where it is.
Yeah, I mean, there's an argument that there are people who don't like the idea of this because they don't want the potential of the Browns having to potentially deal with 3 5th-year options, which is fascinating to me because that would mean they've got 3 players that are worth a 5th-year option, which would suggest that they actually hit on those picks And I struggle to find a scenario where I hate that scenario.
No, those are good those are first world problems. We take those. We take those problems all the time.
Right.
Pete Smith and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out. Also, break. Talk a little bit about the Browns' offense under Todd Monken. Sports4CLE. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
You got so much to do, it's got you feeling blue. Put a little play in your day, 'cause it's fun all over the state. So come on, great games wait for you and me. The Ohio Lottery. Put a little play in your day. Put a little play in your day.
We continue talking Browns with Pete Smith from the Orange and Brown Report. Pete's done a mock draft that we'll get into in a minute. Pete, I'm curious. Todd Monken, what his offensive philosophy? How do you think it's going to be different? How's this offense going to be different than it was under Kevin Stefanski?
Well, I think if he can help it, I think Todd Monken would love to get a quarterback with a big arm. I know everybody's focused on he wants athleticism, and because Lamar Jackson and there's this video clip of him talking at a clinic and all the benefits that has, which are absolutely true. Forcing a defense to play 11-on-11 is a huge advantage for your offense. But I think if he can get him, he would love to be able to get a guy who can make all the throws all over the place and spread teams out and do those type of things. I think from a running perspective, he wants a healthy balance of zone and gap concepts. It's not lost. Like, I know everybody's looking at the offensive linemen, and there are people, well, they want to run a whole lot of power. Everybody they brought in can move. Zion Johnson is an elite athlete. Elton Jenkins, a really good mover. Titus Howard is not a power player. He's more of a positional blocker. So I do think the Browns want to be able to run power and run gap when they can get there. But they're clearly going to do a whole lot of moving with the linemen, zone and pullers and that type of stuff. Overall, a lot of this is to be determined, because some of the, Todd Monken has been great at framing the offense around the talent he has. And so the question he's going to be he has to answer, whether it's Shedeur Sanders, Dylan Gabriel, Deshaun Watson, or mystery quarterback that's not here, is how does he want to, make the offense work around them, and how does he want to add weapons to that group? If the debate is like, well, we want to take a top receiver. Well, Carnell Tate is sort of the obvious outside receiver, whereas a guy like Mekhi Lemon is more of the slot. What is Todd Monken's preference in terms of how he wants to utilize those things? And until we sort of get some decisions on that, it's not entirely clear we know.
The one thing that it appears to me, he likes to find matchups that he can exploit, whereas I think Kevin Stefanski was, this is the system. I think he's kind of, this is what I have. These are matchups. This is a matchup guy that I can go to and go back to and keep going back to.
I always looked at Kevin Stefanski when the offense worked at its best as sort of like, just take what the defense is giving you. They're going to leave somebody open and just continue to take it over and over again, which is why you got the, 2020 when it was Baker Mayfield and that year, or some of the other elements. You had weird guys come up and be really productive at different points, whether it was Donovan Peoples-Jones or Rashard Higgins. And then in 2023, it was all about Amari Cooper. So, I mean, I think a lot of ways it was just the defense is giving you this, just take it. I think Todd Monken might be more inclined to force things in a way that works. Like he had Derrick Henry. So he's just going to run you over with Derrick Henry because he has the guys to do that. And maybe that's his element that he wants to attack. But to your point, he's been really good at prioritizing and finding ways to get those his biggest playmakers to get the ball over and over and over again.
All right, so you did a 7-round mock draft on the Orange and Brown Report. Let's take a look at it. And I like pick number 6, Mekhi Lemon, wide receiver from USC. Then you go tackle Lomu, R. Mason Thomas, edge rusher from Oklahoma, and Max Clare, tight end. We'll bring it back up, but let's talk those first 4 that you have. So 6, 24, 39, and 70. Lemon, we've talked a lot about. I want to see. I think, boy, you look at Zay Flowers, and I think Mekhi Lemon's even more of a problem for defenses than Flowers.
I just look at it like what Detroit has done with Amon-Ra St. Brown and having their tight end in Laporta. The Browns have Harold Fannin. They can add that element with Mekhi Lemon. Jerry Jeudy plays on the outside. You've got guys like Isaiah Bond and Cedric Tillman that can play on the outside. What Mekhi Lemon does that's really frustrating for defenses to deal with is if linebackers want to cheat up to stop the run, you can throw it right behind them. And if safeties want to cheat up to try to take Lemon behind that, now you can try to hit Jerry Jeudy or Bond on a deep post when now they're getting single coverage in a way they couldn't. That's really difficult to deal with. And also, you're taking their best cover players out of it. Not a whole lot of teams are going to put their best corner on an inside guy. And like I'll use the Lions game this year as an example. The Browns defense was really good at containing basically all the elements except the guy in the slot. And we all sat here all season going, well, the Browns don't have a great answer in the slot. A whole lot of teams don't. And that's why you're seeing this proliferation of these weapons. Puka Nacua, Jackson Smith-Njigba certainly can do more than that, but he does a whole lot of damage from the slot. Amon-Ra St. Brown, as a slot receiver, is averaging 1,250 yards a season and 8 touchdowns. Wan'Dale Robinson is 5'8" and just got a contract worth up to $78 million. Parker Washington in Jacksonville is 5'9". He just led the team in receiving. Like, there is a real sort of change that's going on in the NFL with those type of receivers that's working, and teams are sort of leaning into it.
Talk to us what you like about Lomu at 24.
Yeah, I mean, the NFL has been betting on these type of players for a while, and the guy who's been a really high success in the same mold was Garrett Bowles, who also finished his career at Utah. Great feet. He's light. He still needs to get stronger, but still, he came in at 313 pounds at the combine and tested really well. He's 21. He needs to get meaner as a run blocker and all those, but as a zone seal off type run blocker, and more importantly than anything when it comes to left tackle pass protection, he's really good at that stuff. Is it going to take him a minute to sort of figure it out? Yeah, but I don't see that as any different than Monroe Freeling, and I think the price it's a better price point for that type of player.
All right, so 39, you have him going edge rusher. R. Mason Thomas from Oklahoma. What do you like about him?
Well, one of the pre-draft visits the Browns have had, 2 of them have been defenders. He was one of them. And if I've watched Mike Rutenberg and tracked his past, when he was with Atlanta, they just drafted James Pierce, who then had 10 sacks this past year's rookie. Before that, with the Jets, they got the pass rusher from Iowa State a couple years ago who's had reasonable success. And the whole idea of these guys is they're smaller, speedy pass rushers, just speed up everything. And when you get down to just pure pass rush splits, even though R. Mason Thomas's sample size is smaller, his senior year is very similar to Abdul Carter in terms of pass rush run rate and pressure rate and doing those type of things. And everything the Browns have gotten in terms of quick pressures has been from Myles Garrett. They don't really have another sort of sack artist. The idea of taking a pure pass rusher is underwhelming for a whole lot of people, and I get it. But if he hits the way and he can play the way that he does, and just watch him at Auburn, he tortured them for 2 years. How quickly he's able to win and generate sacks just speeds up the offense and makes the defense it's suffocating. If you watched Oklahoma at any point this past year, there were times where that defense just felt like it's always on you.
All right, Max Clare from Ohio State, a tight end to go with Harold Fannin. What do you like about Clare?
Well, first, he can play both inline and out in space, which is a plus. They need an inline tight end. Max Clare, nobody in this class, I think, can match what he did as a sophomore at Purdue when he had 30% of their receiving yardage. And then he goes to Ohio State. He puts on a little bit more weight. I think a lot of people who watch Ohio State would sit there and go, I wish he got the ball more. He was still really good. And then the other part, he got better as a blocker over the course of the season. In fact, in the playoff game against Miami, he was their second highest graded run blocker in that game. So he has put in the work and gotten there. And the Browns have just, over the course of their history, since dating back to 2016, they've taken guys who are primarily receiving tight ends, whether it's been Harrison Bryant, David Njoku, Seth DeVolve, who was a converted wide receiver out of the Ivy League. They've taken these guys who are really good at as receivers and then sort of schooled them on how to block, gotten them bigger, and gotten those other things. So they start with the receiving element and then add the blocking.
All right.
He fits that to a T.
We're going to put up this mock draft one more time. Who of the back half of this, 107, 146, 148, who is intriguing to you? What do you like about him? Give us the guy in the last 5-6 picks that you like the most.
Well, Eric McAllister is really interesting. There's an off-field issue the teams have to be comfortable with, but he's big, he's tall, he's almost 6'4", 200 pounds, and he is wildly productive. And not only that, he had something like 27 missed tackles forced this past year. He's got great speed after the catch. He's a dynamic player with the ball in his hands. He's just, I think he's wildly underrated in terms of just how good he can be, and his splits are better than a lot of the higher-ranked receivers in this class. I just think there's a lot there as far as getting an outside receiver to complement what they get in Mekhi Lemon. And then the other part of this is I know a lot of the people want to get more receivers earlier, but the problem you run into, and not to say it's a bad thing, but if you get a top receiver, whether it's Tate, Lemon, whoever you want, Jerry Jeudy's going to slide into number 2, and Harold Fannin's going to be right there. So even if you hit on that next receiver, they're at best probably going to be your 4th option. So I don't know how crazy how crazy the Browns are going to be in terms of wanting to spend resources to get that potentially 4th option, at least for the right now.
No, that sounds like a guy that's very intriguing. So McAllister from TCU. Pete Smith, as always, great stuff, man. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Pete.
Thanks for having me.
Pete Smith, make sure you check him out. Orange and Brown Report. Always good and insightful Browns coverage. It's going to do it for this edition of Sports for CLE. We'll see you back here tomorrow at 4 o'clock. Have a great night, everybody. See you tomorrow at 4 on Sports for CLE.